Hey guys, Bike here, and I'm back again with another Last Epoch build guide video. This one is for the Void Knight. This is Black Blade Rive. And before we go any further, all gameplay that you are watching in the background was taken at Corruption 1042. Thank you. All right, let's talk about the build real quick. As you guys can see, it just clears through monoliths really fast. It is a ton of fun. If you want to be a samurai, this is the build for you. At least with the sword, and if you have the cosmetic set. If you don't, I'm sure you can get close. The build feels good and is durable at this level of corruption. There is still a few times where I get like a random one shot out of somewhere. I don't know if that is because the game is messing up, lag, servers. I don't know if I would use this as a hardcore build. Actually, I would not use this as a hardcore build, but it is durable. It is strong. Titan Heart really makes it feel pretty good. It does really well at clearing monoliths. I'm able to just go from echo to echo to echo. It's really good. Like, you know, if you just want to set up a whole bunch of woven echoes and just farm through them pretty quick, this build does really great if you like melee. Highly recommend this build. It is a ton of fun. You genuinely feel, at least in my opinion, kind of like a samurai. You get those samurai vibes. I think it's a good setup. Black Blade is a good weapon, but I will say this. Obviously, I'm really trying to sell you on the Black Blade Rive samurai feel. I will say for Rive in general, Black Blade might not be the best in slot weapon, but it is very good and it is very dependable. We will go over some other options in game once we get in there. We're going over the gear. Overall, I would say I'm very satisfied with the build here in season 2. In cycle 1.1, push the build to like 500 corruption, 600 corruption, something like that. Pushing this to over 1042 corruption, somewhere around there. I feel like is a testament to just all the updates Sentinel got. Obviously, there's a lot of overtuning, but Void Knight overall, I feel like has been the biggest winner in the Sentinel Wars. If you wanted to talk about it, all the damage reduction that they get, especially if you're playing melee, it just feels so good now. Like I feel like this is a bit of an ethical build. This has addressed all the issues that we've had with melee before. I know I alluded to the fact that I've been randomly one shot at times, but for the most part, there's a good amount of damage reduction. You can get in, you can do a huge burst of damage and get out. And these are some of the things that I feel like I and many others said melee needed. And I'm so glad that it feels like it was addressed. Hopefully Rive in the coming seasons survives. We already know there's a few builds out there that are kind of a little overtuned, looking at you, a Racing Strike, but for the most part, I think this is a good, well put together idea and fantasy, and I'm loving it. So let's go ahead and talk about some boss fights. This is Raye at Corruption 1042. I'm sure you guys are probably sick of seeing this boss, but I feel like at this point now, it is best to keep fighting this boss because this is the boss I fight all the time. The reason why I say you guys might be sick of seeing this boss is this is arguably, probably not even arguably, but this is one of the most popular bosses to fight right now because after you kill this boss, you fight the Harbinger. The Harbinger drops the World Splitter Axe. Anyway, Raye does a ton of damage. There is one-shot potential here for us, but if you fought this boss a lot, you know what to expect. You can get out the way. I think this build is very great for farming this boss. You're able to get out the way real quick, go to the side. You're very fast. We have over 100% movement speed, and we'll go over that in the gear section. So after we get through Raye, we get to the Harbinger. He doesn't do quite as much damage, so you can actually tank a hit from him. He's just tankier, so you're going to be cutting into his backside quite a bit, trying to take him down a step, but you will get through him. As for Aberoth, he like just fighting normal Aberoth, it's fine. Is this the fastest build? No. Is it fun? Yes. And I'm how do I say this? I'm not really too worried about making a build that kills Aberoth in a couple seconds just for super farm sake. I feel like this build interacts with the boss just fine and does very well, and it's very satisfying. Now, as for Uber Aberoth, I haven't been able to beat him with this. I've tried a couple times. I do think there is potential. Should be seeing some Uber Aberoth gameplay right now. I do think there's some potential because of the movement speed that you have on this build. I found myself being able to dodge a lot of the mechanics. It's just the unfortunate thing is you can get one tapped whenever he does the triple flail thing, even with, nearly 5,000 health. One of the things that I think if you can get damage to a good spot, you might be able to actually interact with it. What just happens is you end up building a debt, if that makes sense. A debt of, oops, I touched that, oops, I touched that, and eventually it just scales up, and then you make one final mistake, and that's the straw that broke the camel's back, and you get absolutely smacked out the way. But for the most part, I do think there's potential here, but you would have to specifically tune this build for the fight. The way when I went in to fight Uber Aberoth, I just took whatever I was speed clearing through monos with. You would have to definitely buckle down, learn the fight, learn the mechanics, and then you would have a shot. But with all that being said, guys, thank you so much for clicking on the video. Consider leaving a like, possibly subscribing to the channel if you like what I do here. And we're going to go ahead and jump into the game. In the description down below is a planner. Feel free to check it out. Let's go. All right, here we are in game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a brief demonstration of how the build works. I know you've seen the intro to the video with all the gameplay, but I want to kind of go over my mindset and how we're going through. You might be wondering what is in the W slot right here. Why isn't there anything? Well, if the eagle-eyed out there who paid attention in the gameplay section might have noticed we actually had these little balls going around us. That is Devouring Orb. The way Devouring Orb works now in Season 2, at least this is the way everybody sets it up, is it automatically summons when you're moving. And that can be really annoying when you're trying to talk and tell people about the build and you move 2 feet and all of a sudden, boom! So I take it off. I'm going to put it on now just to give it a demonstration of what the build does, and then I'm going to take it off just for clarity's sake. So let's go ahead and get into it. You're moving along. This is the enemy right here. It's already going off. You guys see what I mean, man? It's just, it's going insane. You could do a build like this. I just wanted passive damage. I wanted to focus on I wanted to focus on Rive and not be pushing too many buttons. So here we go. You use Void Cleave to close the gap. You put Anomaly on them to deal extra void damage, and then you just let it go. You just let it go, and then you hit them with the Rive. You hit them with the Anomaly, and then you move on with your life. Move on to the next pack, the next pack, the next pack. Use Anomaly just to keep it up if you would like. And that, my friends, is the build. It is pretty simple, and we'll go over a couple different options for you right now. I'm going to let this kind of expire for a second because it gets kind of annoying trying to talk over all that. All right, that was the demonstration. And if you didn't catch it in the intro, if you guys are just interested in a planner, it is in the description down below, along with a loot filter as well as a guide to the loot filter. I'm basically giving you the loot filter that I use for this build. You might have to tune it a little bit. It's not going to be too much. Go ahead, check it out. With all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the gear. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the gear real quick. You might have noticed a little bit of a cut. We had to go grab some items. Let's go ahead and get into it. Let's start with the helmet. I do think Leonine's is best in slot. I have every affix that I want on here, except for maybe that necrotic resistance. I don't really need it. Let's take off the helmet. As you can tell, I don't need it. I would prefer health, but 3 out of 4 ain't bad. Why Leonine's? Well, I'm pretty sure most people, if you're looking up an in-game Sentinel build, already know Leonine's is best in slot for most builds. Now, there's some specific use cases, and I'm going to go over it. But the reason why Leonine's is so good is it gives you the most amount of armor, but it also reduces the damage you take from critical strikes. This is very good because before the old school method of dealing with critical strikes, before the Leonines became available in Cycle 1.0. This is going back to beta. I'm kind of aging myself when it comes to the last Epoch. The way to do it was to use critical strike avoidance and then take the blessing. With Leonines, this is good enough. Now, you would want 85% on that reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes, and that would be good enough on its own. Unfortunately, I got 67. I'm kind of living life on the edge a little bit. Try and get that up as high as possible, but otherwise you're going to want vitality. Strength is always good, and health, preferably health, vitality, strength. T7 vitality is the way you want to go with that. Titanheart, I think, is best in slot. You could use Null Portent, but I'm going to recommend Titanheart. But just for clarity's sake, let's go ahead and show you Null Portent. All right, I don't have any good Null Portents showed. I don't have any good Null Portents here, so I'm just going to show you a random one and explain why I prefer Titanheart. So, Null Portent, right? This is very popular. It's been getting a lot of usage. There was a bug where the damage reduction wasn't capped to 20%, so people were getting a lot of damage reduction. That has since been patched to my understanding, so it's now working as intended. So Null Portent, what are the benefits? What are the downsides? How is it better potentially than Titanheart? Well, Titanheart gives you 114 armor and then also gives you potentially up to an extra 100 armor, so that you can have anywhere from, well, let's just say you can have a max of 214 armor without any potential slams using Titanheart. You already get more with Null Portent. You get a flat 220. So no range. Flat 220. So that's a bonus. You also get free leech with Null Portent. It's very nice. We are a melee build. You might be wondering, well, hey, you've already gone over 2 reasons. It also gives you increased health, leech resistance, leech rate, physical resistance. It's starting to sound like Null Portent's pretty stacked, right? Well, I've found very few 2LP Null Portents. It is a boss drop. It comes from Aberoth. They exist, don't get me wrong, but I found way more 2LP Titanhearts. So in my opinion, a lot easier to work with at first. Let's also go over a couple different other reasons why. The main damage reduction mechanic for Null Portent is if you have, it goes off of each of your resistances. So for each 2% resistance above the cap, you gain 1% damage reduction, right? So we're over capped. We're going to be getting damage reduction based off each individual resistance. So what you need, I'm just going to give you the magic number now, 115% over cap. Well, not over cap, 115% total. So right here for physical resistance, we have 149. That's good. 124, 139, 91, so on and so forth. You want at least 115 in each. And the reason why is you get up to 20% damage reduction for each stat. So for fire, you gain blah, blah, blah. And if you want an example of how this works, you hold Alt over the weapon, over the item, and it reads 1% less damage taken per 2% resistance above the normal resistance cap, up to 20% less damage taken. Multiplicative with other modifiers, for example, having 85% fire resistance will cause you to take 5% less fire damage because it's 10% above the normal cap. And like I said, it goes up to 20%. Magic number is 115. That's what you're shooting for. Here's why I don't like Null Portent. A, the legendary potential is not quite as good as Titanheart. B, if you have your resistances shredded by any condition, right? It could be marked for death, could be poison shred, whatever. You also lose your damage reduction. So it's kind of a 1-2 whammy. You go in, you get hit with marked for death, you get your resistances shredded by 25%. Well, there goes a portion of your damage reduction. That is why I personally prefer Titanheart, because it is a flat 15% damage reduction, but it does require a two-handed melee weapon. This build is using a two-handed melee weapon. Now, if I was running something like Sword and Board, that's where Null Portent would be obviously my pick, depending on the build and how much I need those affixes. So with all that being said, this is why I recommend Titanheart. Just a short blurb. All right. So Titanheart, what do you want on here? You want Vitality and then you want Rive. Now you can go any way you want with this. You could go Rive, then Vitality. I recommend T7 Vitality just like we took T7 Vitality with the Leonine helm, right? Recommend that, and then try and get in +2 to Rive. You could also go for strength. You can go for health. There's a couple different options out there. Also, Titanheart has some great roll ranges that you can get on there. Increase melee damage, increase health. That increased health right there, that 40%, that is like a tier 8 affix. Or a one step above tier 7. Tier 7 goes up to 39%. So 40% increase health, and then like let's say you slam it with a tier 7 health affix. You know, you want to be a nice, good old healthy boy. That's a lot of health. Like you're like, here's an example. Obviously, there's a ton of vitality, but let's take this off. That was over 1,100 health. Yes, boys and girls, healthy. All right, let's put it back on. Okay, cool. So highly recommend Titanheart. Very good. Arguably best in slot. Shatter Chains. You have a couple different options here. I do recommend Shatter Chains. I keep forgetting stuff here, guys. I am sorry, but I don't want to just keep cutting away from the video. Let's go over this. So I feel that Shatter Chains is best in slot for a number of reasons. Health. I would prefer that T7 health and cleanse. That's what I tried to get, but I ended up with this. You know, woe is me. Shatter Chains, it's a plated belt. You can have all the way up to 65 armor, which I got. Also gives you a bunch of increased armor, melee damage, increased melee damage, and then the creme de la creme, the reason why we love it the most. For each stack of Doom, you do 5% more melee damage. If you didn't know, let's see if they got something about it on the in-game guide. No, they don't, unfortunately. So I'm just going to have to explain it to you real quick. When you hit an enemy, you have a chance to inflict Doom if you're using something like Boots of Stymied Fate or Siphon of Anguish or Apathy's Maw. These all have chances to apply Doom. Apathy's Maw gives you 100% chance to apply Doom. It's very nice. We'll talk about this in a little bit. So you apply Doom with Siphon of Anguish. In this case, we're using Siphon of Anguish. You apply Doom. Doom is an ailment that stacks up to 4 times, and per stack of Doom, the enemy takes 5% increased melee damage. When you're wearing Shatter Chains, when you have it equipped, that becomes, I'm guessing they add it on top of, they don't replace, but they add on 5% more melee damage per stack of Doom. So that becomes a multiplicative modifier. And as far as I'm aware of, it's also still doing the 5% increased damage that you generically get from Doom. So this gives us a lot of that's 20% more damage, right? This has given us a lot of increased damage. But like, let's say you don't want to use Shatter Chains. Maybe you're like me and you didn't get Cleanse on there and you're getting clapped. Well, Brewmaster's Buckle, I think, is a great choice. It gives us vitality, gives us endurance. When we drink a potion, we get 10% of max health gained as endurance. Also, we get a lot of armor. It is not more armor because we get that huge increase armor. So let me show you. So right now we have 5,804. What we have Shattered Chains on. Let's take it off. We lost about 1,400 armor. Let's put on this, and nowhere even close because of just the huge amount of percent armor that you gain from Shattered Chains. This is the armor goat. All right, this is the armor goat. But going back over this, that vitality roll is huge. On top of that, you get a lot more potions. So if you can get cleanse on this baby, right? If you can get percent increase health and cleanse, highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. You get this belt from an Echo called the Grand Brewery, and they come with 2 LP, even 3 LP is somewhat attainable. I've only ever, out of the entire time I've played this game, I've only gotten a couple 2 LP Shatter Chains and only 1 3 LP Shatter Chains. And I didn't get Cleanse on that one either. We're just going to be moving on. But yes, Shatter Chains, highly recommend. Goes well with Siphon of Anguish. Just to touch on Siphon of Anguish real quick. We get increased movement speed. Void Pin with Doom. We don't care about that. Increased leech rate. That is nice. Right now is the only source of our leech. we get 2.3% melee damage leeches health and 2% of void damage leeches health. So 4.3% damage leech. That is very good. Very good. Highly recommend Siphon of Anguish. It's a gold ring. It gives us elemental resistance, which is very nice. It's super easy to get 2 LP and 3 LP. I've already found like 3 this season. I just haven't found a good ring to slam with that Siphon of Anguish. But you're going to want T7 increased critical strike chance and health. And then if you get a 3 LP, try and throw some strength or a resistance that you need on there. All right, so that is Shatter Chains and Siphon of Anguish. Let's talk about Flames of Midnight. All right, Flames of Midnight. This gives us swiftness. This is how we're able to move around pretty quick. Swiftness, if you didn't know, is a condition, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. Swiftness gives us, I'm trying to see if they actually say it. No, they don't. Okay, swiftness gives us increased movement speed based on our level. I believe you top out at like 20, 25%, something like that. Don't quote me on that. I'm sure somebody in the comments will, we'll correct that. So check the comments down below to see if I got that one right. I probably didn't. So swiftness is very good. You're able to move around faster, but you lose your evade. There's a couple different items out there that do that. One of them is like Fingers of the Phantom Mire. What's nice about Flames of Midnight is most of the ones that replace your evade, you know how we can normally, let's take it off real quick. You know how we can roll out the way and do something like that. Pretty nice, good for dodging. Well, when you put on something like Fingers of the Phantom Mire, it replaces your evade, and then you're stuck doing something weird. In the case of Fingers of the Phantom Mire, let me showcase it real quick. You put it on, and now your evade has been replaced with a bubble, right? So you lose some of your mobility, but you can do some fun stuff like that. Enemies hit by that take increased damage for a couple seconds. It's pretty fun. But what is really nice about Flames of Midnight is you get like a short little dodge, a short little teleport, right? And on top of that, whenever you use a void skill or fire or necrotic, you gain this little wandering spirit, right? You see him, he looks really cool. Look at that. Oh, well, oops, I kind of messed that up. That was an anticlimactic. How does that work? How did you do that? How did you teleport across the screen? Well, if we read Flames of Midnight, whenever you directly use a fire, necrotic, or void skill, you create a wandering spirit near the target location. And I don't know if it's fully said right here. Each skill type has a separate cooldown. The spirit is created at an accessible location where it can be swapped with. So essentially, let me just explain what we're doing here with this, with Spirit Step. I believe you could read it right here. Swap places with a target wandering spirit at the targeted area. If there is no spirit, you will instead reappear a short distance forward. Effects that trigger when you use evade also trigger when you use Spirit Step. So essentially, let me go heal up real quick. Essentially, we attack, we create this little spirit, we can run away, boom, teleport to him real quick. And when we do that, where we were, there was another spirit. So let me try this again. This is a very popular ring. This is a very popular ring. I believe it's a boss drop. You get it from a Harbinger. I think it's in the Spirits of Fire. Spirit Step, Spirits of Fire. Makes sense. So the Harbinger drops it. I got very lucky with the 3 LP. But also, I was about to say Lagon, but it's not Lagon. Aberoth also drops Flames of Midnight. 1 to 2 LP, very common. 3 LP is a little bit rarer, but it can be done. This is the only 3 LP I ever found. I got exactly what I needed on this ring. Increased critical strike chance. I needed cold resistance, but you can go for health or anything else. And then just regular health. We can have 2 different health affixes. So I highly recommend Flames of Midnight. It gives us swiftness. We get to move around, and we still get a little... stutter step, a little evade. It's not quite as big as a normal evade, right? So let me do it again. We only went like right there, whereas when we actually evade, we go a little bit further, maybe like 25% further, but I still think it's worth having just permanent swiftness. And then on top of that, if you ever get haste, to go with it, haste is very nice as well. Highly recommend Flames of Midnight. Okay, let's talk about the glove slot. So you're going to notice I have a couple different gloves here. I think Eternal Gauntlets are best if you're pushing upper end corruption. If you're going 600 plus, get yourself some Eternal Gauntlets. They're an Exalted. You can find them. They do very well. The thing with this is there's some pretty nasty uniques out there. Fingers of the Phantom Mire, you can get this with 4 LP. 3 LP is extremely common, and on top of it, it only requires level 6. So this is also a great twink pair of gloves. Put this on, you get swiftness, you get increased attack speed. Your evade is replaced by Terrify. Terrify, you saw me do that earlier. You drop a circle, everything gets terrified. Well, you do X number of damage to the enemies that have been affected by Terrify for a couple seconds. It's very nice. The thing is, some people like having their evade or having something. That's why I think Flames of Midnight is the better ring to take. But you could use Fingers of the Phantom Mire if you want. It's not for everybody. But even then, just the amount of armor and armor mitigation that you get from Eternal Gauntlets is just going to be the way to go. It's just going to be the way to go. Highly recommend you use Eternal Gauntlets, but I wanted to show you this option. Also, this is potentially best in slot. All right, let me take a drink real quick. This is potentially best in slot. Falcon Fist, I think there is potential there. It gives us some armor, not quite as much as Eternal Gauntlets, but you're going to want to ignore anything that says Falcon, whatever, unarmed. Don't care about it. You might be even wondering, Bike, why are we talking about Falcon Fist? Well, 3 LP is possible. 2 LP is very common. 4 LP, I don't know. But, you can at least get 3 LP. You're looking for increased melee attack speed and melee fire damage. Don't really worry about that one as much. You want the increased melee attack speed. That's the one you're going to want to try and get. Get a 27%. That is like a T7 increased attack speed. Slam it with T7 increased attack speed. You're going to be attacking so fast. The melee fire damage does a little bit for you. It's melee tagged, so you incorporate the damage into your damage. But as far as I understand it, and please feel free to correct me if I am wrong in the comments down below. Be sure to check it. As far as I understand, you can use the melee, fire damage, but that particular damage doesn't benefit from any percent increases that would say void or otherwise. That is my understanding. If I am wrong, please correct me down below. So you can get a little extra melee fire damage. You can get some increased melee attack speed. I think this could potentially be very good, but ultimately at the end of the day, Eternal Gauntlets, in my opinion, they're easier to get and you can just really customize them. The increased health, it's a bit unfortunate. I would prefer crit chance or strength, but increased attack speed, health, hybrid health, whatever you need, and chance to shred armor is very important if you don't have it on your weapon or your amulet. Other than that, I think this is a great pair of gloves. You're going to want to try and get as close to the 24% of armor mitigation. I know I have some fortune potential left on these gloves, but I've left them alone for now in case I ever wanted to clone them or mirror them with a Rune of Creation, so we shall see. Dark Stride, you gain extra movement speed based off of your melee void damage, so it's super noticeable when you're using something like an Apathy's Maw slammed with like T7 increased void damage, melee void damage. But even with something like Black Blade of Chaos, like if we take off the boots right now, that's a lot of movement speed to lose, right? If we take that off and then we take off what we're getting from Flames of Midnight. Oh, well, there we go. 20% movement speed. Okay, cool. I was able to prove it after the fact. So Dark Stride, it goes off of the melee void damage. It already gives us a lot of movement speed anyway. You can potentially have 20% base. I slammed it with T7 increased movement speed, and I threw on some vitality. Very nice. If you can do a 2 LP Dark Stride and do T7 movement speed, T7 vitality, I think that's the way to go. +1 charge for Void Cleave, main reason why I like Dark Strides, but also the 0.2% increased movement speed per added melee void damage. If we take off this sword, we lost quite a bit of movement speed simply because we already have so much on here. It goes off of melee void damage, not any other source of melee damage as far as I am aware of. It's added. And then it also gives us a nice percent increase all the way up to 42%. Very nice. Highly recommend Dark Stride just so we can move around with Void Cleave a little bit more, because I've done this so many times, I assume everybody knows, but I've turned Void Cleave into a movement skill. I and many others have done that. Let's move on to Anchor of Oblivion. Highly recommend Anchor of Oblivion. This is best in slot until you get something like a Shattered Worlds, which I don't have. I haven't killed Uber Aberoth. I know I'm a chump. But you go kill Uber Aberoth, you get something like Shattered Worlds. That's probably going to be best in slot. Gives you the increased. That gives you the added. I believe it's a flat increased critical strike multiplier, permanent haste, a bunch of good stuff. That's probably going to be best in slot, but until then, you're going to want Anchor of Oblivion. Gives you a whole bunch of survivability, gives you strength, gives you armor, gives you increased void damage, endurance. It caps your endurance for you, gives you endurance threshold, and that increased void damage, very nice. 1 LP, super doable. Get critical strike multiplier and health on there if you can get a 2 LP. Highly recommend Anchor of Oblivion. Let's talk about Nihilus real quick. You can use essentially whatever you want in the amulet slot. You can use like an Oracle amulet. You can use like what's that one? Let's go look it up real quick. There's a Aurora's Time Glass, I think, is right over here. Increase attack speed, ward retention, endurance, health, and then if damage leaves you below 30% health and doesn't kill you, you're restored to full health. This is a possibility as well. Could be very good. Personally, Nihilus, I think, just has so many nice to haves. It gives you increased health, increased mana, increased movement speed. I slammed it with T7 critical strike multiplier, but you could do health if you want. +2 to all skills is why I'm comfortable only putting +2 to Rive on my Titan Heart. +2 to all skills, very big. Increased mana regen, increased armor, 14% more armor is very nice. We did catch a negative with the resistances, but you could get up to 15% increased resistances. And then one of the nice things about it, right? One of the nice things about it, whenever we dodge, we do lose some health, sucks, but you gain 4 seconds of frenzy. At least in my case, that's max. Do that, boom, you get some attack speed. Your attack speed goes up. It feels pretty good. Highly recommend Nihilus. Like I said, you can use whatever you want. So with all that being said, there is just one more item. I didn't forget about it, all right? I know some of you might have seen some of my videos where I'm like, okay, that's the gear, and we move on, and then it's like, yeah, not this time. We saved the best for last. Black Blade of Chaos. I just did a video on this, so I'm not gonna, I'm gonna go ahead and break it down because you might not have seen that video. Let's talk about Black Blade of Chaos. For this build, I think it's very good. I think it's A+. I don't know if it's S tier. And we're going to go over a couple different reasons why. One reason is it looks really like, one good reason for Black Blade of Chaos is it looks sick. All right, guys, I'm just saying, I know there's a number of you out there who just like the fantasy of a build. And I'm telling you guys, right now, the aesthetic, this is thumbnail worthy. All right, man, you might have even clicked on the video. I typically, for those who don't know the YouTube game, you can upload a couple different thumbnails. So I like to put out a couple different things. So maybe you didn't, but there's probably somebody out there who did click on the video where all you saw was this guy holding that sword and you thought that looks cool. Or maybe you didn't think at all and you just clicked on it because you saw Babbling Puck. If that's the case, you guys are homies. Anyway, beyond looking cool, let's go over a couple different things that Black Blade of Chaos does really well. It's an Odachi. Gives you 70 flat damage. That's okay. I mean, it could be more if you're used to axes, right? But 70 flat damage is good. Love Odachi. Has a fast attack rate. Really like that. Here's the first really good range. 100 to 170% increase melee critical strike multiplier. That's a lot of melee critical strike multiplier. Excuse me, real quick. Obviously, you want to try and get close to 170%. 1 LP, very doable. 2 LP, it's been done. Not by me, but it's been done. If I had a 2 LP, I would go for either melee attack speed or melee critical strike chance. And we'll go over a couple of those, what's nice to have in the skill section. But you're going to want T7 melee void damage. That's what you're going to want. If you can get 2 LP, that's when those other options come into play. Ignore the lethal mirage stuff. That's for our rogue friends. Dexterity. Dexterity is nice. We do have some dexterity scaling with this sword, but we don't utilize it a whole lot. But if you're like running something like a red ring setup, red ring, could be a thing. At that point, you're not running Shattered Chains. You're probably running something like Brewmaster's Buckle. But yeah, if you're doing that, you're probably getting a lot of extra dexterity on the side. This item becomes even more interesting at that point. But yeah, we get 4% void pin per 5 dexterity. Right now, I have 8 dexterity, so I get 4% void pin. If I can get 2 more dexterity from somewhere, I would have 8% void pin. And you guys can see it's a scaling modifier. It's a scaling thing. We shall go. We shall see. We're not using the lightning pin, but it's there. Melee lightning damage, like I said before, we can utilize the melee lightning damage. We just don't get the benefit from the increases, the percent increases. Melee void damage, very nice. You want that. The chance to shock is very good, too, for this build. If you didn't know, shock is an ailment that stacks up to 10 times, and each stack of shock increases the chance that the enemy can be stunned. Yeah, you could stun lock some enemies at the higher end. Doesn't work as well against bosses, but against some rare enemies, I've stun locked some rare enemies at like 800 corruption. It was filthy. All right, so chance of shock is very good. And chance to inflict time rot, it's a great perk to have. We don't utilize it as much, but it's very popular with some other builds out there. If you're interested in that, in the video I uploaded, just all about, unique deep dive, Black Blade of Chaos. We went over all those juicy reasons. You might be aware of it. Go check it out. Yeah, so let's say you don't want to use Black Blade of Chaos or you can't get a good one. There is a lot of ranges on it. What do you do? Well, let's go over a couple different options. I think Clothals would probably be best in slot, because you get a lot of flat damage. You get 180. You also get strength. You get dexterity, which we don't really need, but, potentially 11 strength. Very nice. It has a faster attack rate. You also gain the critical strike chance, like base, just baked right into it. Your block chance is converted to parry chance, so it gives you some options there. You get melee critical strike multiplier per meter from the target. I'm not exactly sure. Up to 5 meters. I don't really know how well that would work with something like Rive, because I'm guessing it depends on how many meters you are. So this is like what, 1, 2, something like that. So that's a little extra melee critical strike multiplier that you can get. Obviously, we're going to get a lot more out of Black Blade, but just by the fact that you could get more base... Well, is it more base flat? 180 versus 70 versus, potentially. I think you could get a little bit more out of Black Blade of Chaos in terms of just flat, but you have a lot more ranges you got to deal with. Also, that melee lightning damage I already went over. You don't really get to benefit it quite as much, whereas this is just generic. It folds into any build. I still think Clothals is going to be best in slot, but the problem is I don't have a good one. This is probably my best one. You want T7 melee void damage, and then if you can swing it, especially with Clothals, you're going to want attack speed. I haven't gotten one yet. For that reason, I like stuff like Black Blade of Chaos. You know, you can slam it. You can target that slam. But Clothals, if you can ever get a good one, this is probably best in slot. Apathy's Maw, this was the Kane last season. What's really nice about it is you already have a chance to apply Doom baked into Apathy's Maw. You also get a massive amount of flat damage, and you get the leech rate. This is very good. This is extremely good. You could slot this in instead of Black Blade of Chaos. They both work out. Yeah. Apathy's Maw is probably pretty good. I'm trying to get a 2LP because I have a specific axe I would like to slam with it. We shall see. Still, I feel like Apathy's, it's so slow that it just doesn't feel that good unless you have melee attack speed on there. That's why I personally don't really use Apathy's. It's good if you get the T7 critical strike, T7 melee void damage on there, but I want that melee attack speed. I really do. Highly want that melee attack speed. So yeah, Dreamthorn, I've done a unique deep dive on this. This is very good. I would recommend this for leveling. Requires level 15. You have a couple different options on here. It's easy to get 2LP on this thing. So you could go the distance with Dreamthorn, but I think Black Blade is better overall in that case. Let's go over a couple different exalted options, and I'm going back to the axes on this. So you could do T7 melee void damage on an Odachi base, which would be very good, but I happen to have some good exalted axes we can go over. You're looking for T7 melee void damage. Now the base for this, the Bone Scythe, is not that good, but melee damage, it's good. Melee void damage, good. Melee attack speed, good. Chance to chill on hit, good. All attributes, I prefer armor shred, but you can go for that. This one is one of those new fancy fandangled champion affixes that I happen to hit a lucky. Like, it already came to me like this with the plus increase to Void Cleave. I was able to edit the melee attack speed, chance to chill, and all attributes. But yeah, that is nasty right there. Plus another charge to Void Cleave. Very good. Very good. This could potentially just be pretty good on its own. If I had a better base, this might even be best in slot. Keep your eyes out for something like this. It could be the way to go. We also got Dark Jade Cleaver. That's not really the base that we're caring about. We're looking at the affixes. T6 melee attack speed, T7 melee void damage. This could be the way to go as well. Personally, I do like Black Blade of Chaos a little bit more. I've used this one for a hot minute. It's very good. This is very good too. You're gonna have to figure out what you want with the build and go from there. All right, guys. Before we go any further, I did forget one thing. We're gonna loop back around. Sularon Step. You could use this in place of Dark Stride, but I'm going to show you something real quick. Right, we're going to take off Dark Stride, then we're going to put on Solaron Step. 92% increased movement speed versus 113. Now, if you don't care about using Void Cleave as your traversal skill, like at all, you could go with this. This could be the way to go, but ultimately, I do think Dark Stride is the way to go, but nonetheless, you could roll with Solarons. You got movement speed, you got melee critical strike multiplier. The main thing you're gonna have to watch out for is that reduction in your physical resistance right here. If you can get past that, yeah, and I'll show you how to get past that. We go over here to the blessing section, and well, I guess I left this on by accident. I'm gonna have to go swap that out real quick. But Grand Resolve of Grail, physical resistance. You pick this up right here. You don't have to worry about it, right? But since I'm gonna be using Dark Strides, probably gonna want to swap that one out for some armor. Nonetheless, this is a good setup. It was a good setup. Yeah. All right, guys, that was a lot to talk about when it came to the gear, but I wanted to really break it down and show you all the different options. I am going to try and speed up the rest of the build guide, though, to get through everything. So that is the gear. Let's go ahead and talk about the idols. Idols are very simple. You're looking for 2 of these, right? You're looking for a chronophage heretical idol, and then you're going to want to try and slam it with something. I got health, healing effectiveness, that's fine. This one I got increased movement speed, increased damage, that's fine. Vitality, chance to inflict time rot, we don't really need it. Or increase echo damage when a skill echoes and increase melee damage. This is the one you want for sure, but don't sleep on this vitality one. We're very close to 90 vitality, and that'll make sense when we get to the skill section. Highly recommend these. You could even take this one out in favor of another vitality one. I don't recommend it. Try and figure out your vitality elsewhere and stick with at least one of these idols. They're very nice. The chronophages, I highly recommend. After that, everything else is just going to be about your resistances, vitality, anything else that you might possibly need. And then go from there. Okay, like this one right here, the increased critical strike chance, critical strike multiplier. You could also go for health if you can find it, but mostly use it to shore up your resistances. Okay, that is the idols. Let's go ahead and talk about the blessings. So this is a personal preference, but I do recommend experience, personal preference. But I went for rings. I didn't pick one up here. Increased prefix shard drop rate. Black Sun, you're going to want critical strike multiplier. Right here, I grabbed lightning resistance. This is still the basic one. My bad. I went for all res here. You could go for critical strike avoidance, but I recommend all res. Armor, you're going to want armor. If you're using Solarons, you're going to want the physical resistance, but otherwise you're going to want armor. I'll correct that in the planner, so don't worry. And then you can grab whatever you want here. I didn't grab anything because I hate this timeline. And yeah, that is the blessings. Let's go ahead and talk about the skills real quick. All right, so we're talking about Rive. We got a +4 to Rive here. So let's talk about the ones that you want. We don't have 100% critical strike chance. What I'm doing here, I'm using the critical strike chance on my rings. Can you guys see this? Okay, so right now we have a 33% melee critical strike chance. All right, we have a 33% melee critical strike chance. And when we're using Rive, we have a 6% crit strike, base crit chance to the 3rd strike on Rive, right? And when we take Focus Strike, 3rd critical strike. let me read that again. Focus Strike. Rive's 3rd strike has double crit chance, and its critical strikes deal more damage, but strikes 1 and 2 can no longer critically strike. And then on top of that, you gain a little extra critical strike multiplier. So it doubles your crit chance. So if we add in the 6% base that we're getting to our other base and then increase it by our increased critical strike chance, I'm just going to say we already did the math on stream. It's somewhere around 100% increased critical strike chance for the 3rd strike of Rive. So that's why when it comes to Rive, I've tried to increase the damage of the 3rd strike. Anything to get a little bit more damage to help boost up the 3rd strike. We're really focused on that. If you have something like a Clothel's Needle, or you have your crit chance otherwise taken care of, don't take this. Maybe take a couple points here if you need some base critical strike chance, and then take something like a Savagery, right? Go down here, grab some of this. Maybe don't take that, but go down here, grab some Savagery, what not. Essentially, we come up this side of the tree, we grab Temporal Warrior for Void Conversion, and it also doubles your Echo chance. Foe Cleaver, very good. Doubles the effect of damage stats on two-handed weapons. That's a lot of extra damage when it comes to Rive. Ripples of Oblivion gives us more damage and is tripled for Echoes, so we go for a high Echo chance. And Weapon Specialist. So here's one thing where using an axe could be a huge boon. Void damage per vitality with an axe. We stack a lot of vitality. That could give us a lot of extra damage with an axe. I'm using a sword, so we gain a little extra physical damage per dexterity. We're not stacking dexterity. I still think the swords are very fun. I still think it's very fun. But the way Rive is set up, axes could be very good. So that's why circling back. If you can get a two-handed axe with T7 melee void damage and get yourself a good critical melee attack speed, maybe even some critical strike chance, this could be the way to go. Personally, I like Black Blade. I think it's very fun. It does 1,000 corruption just fine. All right, moving on from that. Devouring Orb, you could use literally whatever you want, but here's a couple nice to haves. It summons on its own. You don't have to press any buttons. It can go out there. It does damage on its own. Very nice. Also, Void Adept. While you have a Devouring Orb active, you gain 10% global more void damage. And while you have 90 plus vitality, so 90 or higher, this value is doubled. So me being at 86% kind of hurts. If I'm using something like this axe, I have 91 vitality. I then get that bonus. But I want to keep using this sword, so I'm going to have to figure it out elsewhere. It'll probably be the idols. If I swap out this idol and then get a better one here, like, you know, if I can get a +4/+4, I'm good. I'm off to the races. And we can go from there. All right. So you want to grab Void Adept, 1 point in Hollow Orb. Very nice. You get some more durations. What I'm mostly going for is the Rending Maw. That way we just always have a chance to apply slow and always have a Void Res Shred chance with Devouring Orb. That way I can apply some of those things for us. Moving on, Void Cleave. This is the way I have Void Cleave set up now. I'm not going to lie. I like it to do some extra damage here, but we're not doing a ton of damage with Void Cleave. We're using it mainly as a traversal skill. You could drop some of this Champion of the Void stuff and Riftmaker and go towards this side of the tree, or even maybe go down here and grab something like Ravaging Aura, or go up here and grab Time Rod or something, right? You know, damage per Time Rod. That could be something that you want to grab, but I personally find this very comfortable right here. Getting the extra mana on crit from Void Cleave can be very good. The thing is, we don't have 100% critical strike chance. Even with the increases here, we don't have 100%. The critical strike, the critical vulnerability is very nice with Void Cleave, but we're not utilizing as much. The main thing we're utilizing is the traversal skill. So make sure you go up here, you grab the extra charge, and then grab this, and then after that, go wherever you want. Healing Hands is a nice passive bonus. You only need to take a 5-point dip into the Paladin tree, but we got a couple nice options here. We can put we have 100% chance to proc Healing Hands when we use Cleric's Hammer. Cleric's Hammer is a very nice thing to have when we're using Healing Hand. Well, okay. Sorry, guys. Let me repeat that. Cleric's Hammer. We have 100% chance to proc Healing Hands. Healing Hands, we can gain all these other bonuses here in the tree, as well as some flat healing. Very nice. Helps us stay alive. It's also a way, since we've turned it into another hit, it's also a nice way to proc more melee hits, right? More melee effects. More melee effects for like armor shred, stuff like that. I think it's very nice to have, all as well. It's another passive bonus to have as you're going along. I'm looking for passive bonuses here. I don't want to be like trying to, you know, play keyboard warrior trying to get all this passive stuff. So I think Healing Hands is very good for that. And then last but not least, we have Anomaly. We're going for the time bubble stuff. We're trying. We put a point here into Void Touch. Put a point into Time Bubble. 5 points into Temporal Mastery. 1 point into Lingering Memory. 1 point into Time Lord. This gives us the whole Time Bubble, so we use it. It follows us around. 2 points into Manipulation. We gain 20% increase attack speed with that, and then 3 points into Swift Rest. Increase cooldown reduction there. We already have our critical strike chance taken care of, but you could put points into Decimation. and then 1 point into lingering memory just to keep it around. You're going to want to put 1 point into immediacy. So let me explain this real quick. Normally what happens when you use anomaly, you press it, you hit the enemies. Now it may seem like anomaly, the effects of anomaly are only here, but no, you can actually aim it. Put your mouse over an enemy and hit that. You see that little bubble that popped up? That means those enemies are under the effect of anomaly right now. So what effects from anomaly are they going to take? Normally when you use anomaly and you press that over an enemy, it sends them 5 seconds in time forward, right? And then you press a button and they come back. And when that happens, they take a whole bunch of effects now that they're back into the present. They can take increase ailment. They can take cycle of decay. They can be stun lock, like that. What we're doing is we're removing that combo. Whatever happens instantly happens. And what we're doing, this is where we get a lot of damage. Mark of Rot, right? We hit the enemy right here with anomaly. Now for the next 5 seconds, they take 50% increased void damage. That is huge. That is massive. So run up on an enemy, press that there, go to town, turn them into Swiss cheese, my friend. Turn them into Swiss cheese. All right, guys. And next, we're going to talk about the passive tree. Well, let's go. All right, here we are in the passive tree. So let's go ahead and get into it. We got 6 points into Juggernaut, gives us some fire resistance and void resistance, as well as some strength. 8 points into Fearless. We want all that vitality. 5 points into Armor Clad, gives us the damage taken from nearby enemies is reduced by 10%, as well as some armor. 5 points into Valiant Charge. Highly recommend because that 30% increased cooldown recover speed for movement skills. Void Cleave now benefits from that. Highly recommend that. 1 point into Time and Faith. This helps us generate some mana when we're attacking with Rive. And the fun thing about it, you don't have to actually be hitting an enemy. You just have to attack the air and you will generate back some mana. And then 5 points into Blade Master. You want that sword and you want that attack speed for the sword or axe, either choice. Keep it with those two. You'll have a great way to go. 30% increased attack speed is very nice. Now, in my update video, I had 5 points in Weapons Master and gives us 10% increased melee attack speed with the sword. That is still very good to have. I do recommend it, but one thing I was doing when it came to the tree, when I was trying out the axes, obviously this doesn't really help if you're using an axe. Excuse me. Excuse me again. So that doesn't really help you when you're using an axe. But if you come over here and look at this, I put the points into temporal velocity, that increased vitality and cooldown recovery speed. It just felt so good. Even when I went back to the sword, I kept it. So you could use Weapons Master and get that 10% increased melee attack speed with a sword. I'm actually recommending temporal velocity, but let's go over everything else real quick. So for the Paladin tree, Defiance gives us attunement and elemental resistance. We need 5 points for healing hands, but this is not a bad 5-point dip because endurance threshold per 2% uncapped elemental resistance gives us even more endurance threshold. So over the resistance that we have over here, the higher, the better. We get more endurance threshold. Right now, we're rocking 1,213. I think that's pretty good. Let's go over to the Void Knight tree. So, if you don't have any source of leech, you're going to have to put at least 6 points down here. But if you're using something like a Siphon of Anguish, like I am, you don't have to worry about it. So here's how you would go about speccing out your Void Knight tree if you already have a Siphon of Anguish, a Bleeding Heart, a Null Portent, something like that. 5 points into Abyssal Endurance gives us health, void resistance, physical resistance, as well as void and physical damage taken minus 5%. Highly recommend. 5 points into Sorrow and Steel gives us armor and increased area with melee area skills, 25%. Huge. 5 points into Void Corruption gives us critical strike chance as well as critical strike multiplier per point in the Void Knight tree. We have 77 points in the Void Knight tree. We gained 77 critical strike multiplier. That's fat. 5 points into Dark Maw, increase health and chance to absorb health on kill. The increased health is worth the 5 points. If you ask me, just a 10%, that's like a T4, T5 affix right there. If we're counting like the health, that is a T5. It's a low T5, but it's a T5 if we're talking about the helmets. So highly recommend that. 5 points into Doom Knight gives us 5 strength, 30 health, and a 5% more armor. 5 points into Woe gives us physical pin and void pin, as well as a frailty chance and a slow chance. 5 points into Singular Purpose gives us more void damage, as well as 5% less damage taken from slowed enemies and time rotting enemies. That's a 10% damage reduction. Very nice. I put all 8 points into Temporal Velocity. Excuse me. Because I wanted that cooldown recovery speed and, more importantly, that vitality. 10 points into Eternal Form, 10 vitality, 20% increased health. And with the 5-point bonus, we get the health per vitality plus 2. So it increases our health scaling with vitality. So I know not everybody uses this, but I do highly recommend, since we're doing Rive and we get all this extra bonus damage with Rive, right? We get double echo chance right here. That means that right now we have a 40% chance to echo. Well, with Temporal Warrior, it doubles it. We have an 80% chance to echo with Rive. I think it's very important to increase your echo chance anywhere you can when it comes to using Rive, because we gain all this extra damage right here from echoes. Tripled bonus, 20% increased chance, 20% more damage. That is tripled. That's 60% more damage with an echo. So I try to echo wherever I can. So I put 5 points into Echoing Strikes, 10 points into Time Legion, and yes, I put 1 point into Avatar of Regret, even though it increases our mana costs and reduces our attack speed. Highly recommend. 4 points into Mortal Cleave. You gain Mortal Cleave when you hit an enemy that is below... You gain Mortal Cleave when you hit an enemy that is on low health, below 35% health. Mortal Cleave grants you more hit damage for 8 seconds. So we gain 10% more damage for 10 seconds when we hit an enemy that is below 35% health. On top of that, this gives us 4% increased critical strike, 4% base critical strike chance. And then 5 points into Abyssal Fluctuation for elemental damage taken as void. It converts 50% of the elemental damage we would have taken. And then we take 20% less void damage. That's fat. That's real fat. Agree with that. So I am level 99. With my last point, I'm either going to put it here in Mortal Cleave or Singular Purpose. Go from there. Anyway, guys, I am Babbling Bike. Thank you so much if you made it all the way to the end of the video. I know this is going to be like an hour long, but excuse me, I wanted to go over all those different options in the gear section. So thank you so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate it. If you like what I do here, leave a like, possibly subscribe. I try to do one build guide a week. We're going to be working on a Time Rot build next. We're not going to be doing the popular one with Black Blade of Chaos. I'm going back to Void Storm, a build that I started in cycle 1, and I'm going to see what we can do with that. That's going to be a lot of fun. Really appreciate it. Hopefully you guys can keep tuning in. Anyway, you guys take care. Peace out.